Friends, at this time we are going to begin the funeral services for Barbara Lynn Ruber. If you have a cell phone or a pager, I would ask for you to please take a moment to turn it off or place it in the silent mode. And officiating today's services will be Cantor Howard Friedland.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Dayan ha'emet Adonai natan Adonai lakach Yishem Adonai mivorach. Blessed are you, eternal our God, sovereign of all worlds, who is the true judge. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be God's name. Welcome to everyone who is here. We have come together as family and community to express our sacred sorrow. We have come together to draw strength from one another and from the ultimate source of all strength. We have come together to affirm comfort and blessing in the face of deepest loss. We have come together to bid farewell to Barbara Lynn Ruber. We share a common prayer that the source of healing sustain those of you who grieve. May those wounded with loss be blessed with love and compassion. We pray that the journey that lies ahead lead from darkness to light, as it is written, "Thus says the source of hope, I will respond to your yearning. When you call out to me in the night, I will answer. I will be with you even in the darkest of places. I will give you strength. I will nourish you, and you shall know protection beneath the shelter of my wings." And we extend heartfelt condolences to Barbara's husband, Norman, to her son, Brett, her grandchild, Micah, to her sister, Debbie, and really to all of those who were here, nieces, nephews, friends, whom she gathered from years ago. We pray for wholeness and compassion in the days to come. And let us say, Amen. The 23rd Psalm. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot teshe yarbitzeni, al me menuchot, ינח עליני. נפשי ישובב, ינחני ומעג לצדק. ינחני ומעג לצדק. למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא יירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תוך לפני שולחן נגד צוררי. דשנת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב החסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני Leorech Yamim. Adonai roi lo echsar. Adonai roi lo echsar. Let's read together the translation of the 23rd Psalm found in your pamphlet. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Psalm 121. Esai nai el harim me'ayin yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz. My eyes look into the void. From where will my help come? My help comes from my very source, the fashioner of order and harmony. Your guardian will catch you when you slip. Your shelter will protect you while you sleep. Your night will not last forever, for your protector will surely bring back the sun in the morning. Your source will watch over you at all times. And as you came into this world, swaddled in loving embrace, so shall you leave. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back, we pray, to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage. The Torah is the sacred book of the Jewish people. It was written, as all books in its time, as a scroll, and we read it from the beginning to the end, and then we, just as we have a cliffhanger, we roll it back again and read it from the beginning. And we always find something different in it year by year, depending on our life stage. Everyone, I believe, writes their own Torah scroll, everyone who lives. And just as the brilliance of the Torah is that it gives us characters who are both great and meritorious, exemplary on how to live our own lives, and it gives us characters who are horrible and show us how not to live a life. Not surprisingly, often those two characters are found within one person in the Torah, as they are found in humanity. We are a combination of all those things, humans trying to do the best we can on earth, trying to answer the universal questions. How did we get here? What do we do? What is our purpose while we're on earth? What do we leave behind to those when we go, and where do we go when we leave here? And some of those questions can be answered, some cannot. But we all answer them. We all try to ask them. And in living our lives, we write our own personal Torah scroll. And there was much to learn on how to live our lives from Barbara. And so today, we'll hear from people who were near and dear to her to give the story of her Torah. First, we'll call upon her niece, Bryn Wexler.
My Auntie Barbara loved to give gifts. If you asked her, she would probably say her favorite gifts to give would range from chocolate to candy to jewelry she made to sentimental knickknacks and things she might think you would love, especially from a museum gift shop. But actually, the greatest gift she's ever given me, and I would imagine many of you too, is that Barbara always showed up. Throughout my childhood, Auntie Barbara showed up for every birthday, family holiday gathering, life celebration, amusement park adventure, Halloween costume fashioning, Charlie Louie's garlic chicken and sizzling rice soup feast, outing at Marshall Fields during Christmas time with a not-so-brief pit stop in the freezing cold Garrett's line. Absolutely worth it. Also, every performance that involved a stage, imagined or real, or an ice rink. The places, events, and people she showed up for is remarkably endless. Since moving to LA, Auntie Barbara showed up by calling, texting, and visiting. She never missed a birthday or a Hanukkah gift, and later, when my boys were born, she continued to show up, showering them with love and gifts along with my Aunt Debbie. She showed up for what felt like the year-long adventure of Bryn getting married. When I had Jonah, then Toby, Auntie Barbara showed up by making it a priority to travel to LA and meet them within the first few months of their lives. Also, of course, with my Aunt Debbie. When my mom died, she showed up by shielding Josh and me from her own grief and instead opened her home and her heart to anything we needed for the rest of her days on earth. Auntie Barbara showed up by keeping my mom's memory alive every single day for the rest of her days. When I was having a tough time, and there has been many over the years, Auntie Barbara showed up as an extremely wise, loving, and supportive confidant and shoulder to cry on. If you asked her to, and only if you asked, because she would never want to intrude. She had the unique ability to listen, hold space, and advise at a level that can only be described as that of a deeply wise old soul. She was like my own little Buddha, even, compassionate, empathetic, insightful, optimistic, yet realistic, and always knew just what to say to make it make sense. She showed up by being our collective cheerleader, always in the audience of our lives, and definitely physical ones as well. In the front row, enthusiastic about everyone else's enthusiasm, and ready to support and cheer us on. The last thing Auntie Barbara said to me just last week, when she could barely speak, was, "I love you." Until the very end, she showed up. Having a mom, a grandmother, a wife, a sister, an aunt, and friend who showed up, like Barbara did for us, is a rare, rare gift. And sadly, it's one that can be overlooked and underappreciated from time to time. I'm certainly guilty. So Auntie Barbara, thank you. Thank you for always, always showing up.
Thank you, Bryn. Next, we'll hear from Barbara's friends, Angie and Sally.
Norman, Brett, and to all her loving family. Let's see if I'm gonna I want to give you my sincerest condolences. And only imagine the pain you've experienced throughout this journey with Barbara. Oh, okay. So a cute 7th grade boy and Greek olives. What can they possibly have in common? Well, this is how Barbara and I started our almost 60-year friendship of love for one another. The cute boy was my neighbor and Barbara's crush, and the olives were always in my fridge at home, and Barbara's favorite after-school snack. She grew tired of the boy, but never of the olives. I think her love of ethnic food led her to explore the world through travel. She started with a trip to Israel, living on a kibbutz, and then exploring much of Europe. Remember, at the time, no internet, no GPS, no phones. Her job at TWA certainly facilitated this love of travel, and she continued to explore new places throughout her life. She found joy with all the people she met along the way. She experienced this joy because she truly was interested in everyone she met and all the stories they brought to her life. If you were lucky to be Barbara's friend, like us, you could be sure that when she asked you, "How are you?" she really was interested. She asked questions and, most importantly, listened to the answers. She conquered this precious and sometimes elusive human trait of truly being interested and engaged in her friends' and even strangers' lives. Barbara met other great friends throughout her life and loved them all. Our group of dear friends went from young girls to very loving grandmothers. Micah became the joy of her life. I want Micah to know how creative his grandmother was, from her beautiful and accomplished sewing to her jewelry designs that were chosen by the Evanston Art Center to be in their yearly shows. She was creative and meticulous in the execution of all her passions. In high school, Barbara started her lifelong commitment to volunteering and became a candy striper at our local hospital. The nights Marla, Barbara, and I were working, we would eat in the hospital cafeteria, and of course Barbara would even have something good to say about the cafeteria food. She became a tutor for struggling students at Fairview and was always interested in their families and their lives. Again, she did this enthusiastically and with pure joy for all their progress. She loved music and musical theater, and this led her to work with the Cultural Arts Committee of Skokie for many years. Barbara was a great dog mom before it became fashionable. She loved and cherished all her precious pups, but I think Sassy may have been her favorite. She made her beautiful chocolates, participated in ice skating dance shows, swam with the dolphins, and countless other passions with pure joy, love, great wit, and boundless enthusiasm. I hope she visits our dreams and continues to tell us stories of her journey throughout the universe, and as always, with joy and love. I will miss my dearest friend every day.
Barbara and I met in 1966, 57 years ago. As freshmen at the Jameson branch of Mather High School, we became close friends very quickly and remained the best of friends through the years, sharing happy times from our teens through young adult womanhood to becoming parents and grandparents. There is a group of girls here today that also share this longevity with Barbara. We share so many memories with Barbara, which we will always carry in our hearts and remember and laugh and cry together. But on a personal note, Barbara and I also had our share of sad times, from the loss of our older sisters around the same time at so young an age, the loss of our moms also around the same time, and then, of course, the devastating news of Barbara's illness. I want everyone to know Barbara was a woman of many talents and passions. She had a talent for sewing, which we saw in the many detailed Halloween costumes she made for Brett, and also her famed Humphrey Bogart raincoat she sewed with determination and passion for her marketing major clothing class at Northern Illinois University. She was so proud of it and adored that raincoat so much that she recently had it refitted for her smaller frame. We took clothing in high school together, and we both worked at Mary Lester Fabrics on Devon Avenue while in college. Barbara made clothing for the store's window display. She was that good. Barbara was a talented jewelry maker and got much pleasure creating her silver designs, especially the roller coaster pin she made for her niece Bryn. Barbara worked for a while at Sandberg Jewelers and later for Skagen Watches so she could follow this jewelry passion of hers. Barbara also had a love and talent for molding chocolate candy into creative and beautiful works of art, from her chocolate haunted house, her chocolate Noah's Ark, and her heart-shaped chocolate boxes to the beautiful chocolate flower decorations she so lovingly made for Kate's bridal luncheon. She even sold her chocolate designs at an art show she was in many years ago. She loved children and worked as a part-time teacher's aide for a few years at Fairview School in Skokie, Brett's grammar school. She also served on the Fine Arts Commission in Skokie for a while. Barbara loved her dogs and trained her Havanese Sassy to do some tricks. She was involved in the Havanese Club of America and helped man a booth at the convention here in Illinois. Yes, Barbara had many talents, but most importantly, Barbara had a talent of being a true friend in every sense of the word. Barbara's friendships span over 50 years with many who are here today, along with newer friends she made on her journey in life. Barbara put her heart and soul not only in everything she did, but also in the love she had for everyone that was lucky enough to know her. She was smart, sassy, and wise, a loving soul who will be terribly missed by everyone she touched and loved. Norman Brett, she loved you so much with all her heart. So rest in peace, my dearest and marvelous friend, Barbara.
That would have made Barbara laugh.
That's the English part of us.
Thank you, Angie and Sally. And now we'll hear from Barbara's sister, Debbie.
I'm going to try. My heart is aching at the loss of my sister Barbara, but it's also full of gratitude and love beyond words and time. Growing up, I just assumed that everyone had a relationship with their sisters like I had. I came to learn how fortunate I am that we had such a special bond. I loved being Barbara and Karen's little sister. Barbara had a fun-loving, adventurous spirit and was game to try all sorts of things. She loved to travel and went abroad on her own and lived on a kibbutz in Israel, all before it was trendy, before it was the trendy thing to do. To the delight of Shayna, Alexa, Brett, Bryn, Josh, and me, Auntie Barbara, Mom, would be the first to wait in line with all of us for the front seat of the roller coasters during our many trips to Great America. She created beautiful jewelry. She made delicious chocolate candy and chocolate confections, sewed awesome, one-of-a-kind. These Halloween costumes must have been awesome. We keep mentioning it. But she sewed awesome, one-of-a-kind Halloween costumes for not only Brett, but for Sassy, too. She took amazing photos of Norm. He has displayed all over their home, and he's honored that talent, and he's her biggest fan of her photography. And I'm looking forward to seeing it still. She even joined a precision ice skating team at the Skokie Stadium. Barbara would often say that one of her favorite hobbies was collecting friends throughout her life. Looking out so many of you. She succeeded spectacularly. She loved her dear friends and they loved her back. Some of those connections have lasted for decades. And because of that, I got to know and love so many of you too. I cannot thank you enough for being there to support her and me too, and the family, especially during these incredibly difficult times. She was always Barbara. Barbara was also blessed with a caring and loving family. Thank you all for being there, and so more than I can name all of the people who helped. Norm, Barbara was so comforted by your presence, by your holding her hands, and by your kisses. I remember when she sweetly asked, I'll always remember this, when she sweetly asked you more kisses. It was beautiful. And I said, should I leave the room? Brett, Barbara loved being your mom. She lit up around you. You had such a special bond with her. And Kate and her family were the frosting on her cake. And speaking of cakes, I can take comfort in knowing that you will carry on her expertise in the art of perfectly cutting a cake. I'm so glad Barbara got to be Micah's bubby. He brought so much joy to her. Thank you, Barbara, for being such a wonderful, loving sister, mother, wife, auntie, bubby, and friend. You were a special gift to us all. I miss your laugh, your smile. She cracked herself up. I miss your presence as my anchor, my sounding board, my therapist, my confidant, my advisor, and mostly my best friend. I love you with all my heart. We're all going to miss you. I'm going to miss you.
Thank you, Debbie. Now we'll hear from Barbara's son, Brett.
So, did anyone remember to bring the chocolate? Perfect. As you all know, my mom loved chocolate. And you can be assured that if there was any chance chocolate was going to be needed, and there usually was, she was going to have it with her. She was famous for always showing up with homemade chocolate-covered strawberries, or, if you were lucky, a molded chocolate creation. In a bit of kismet, seeing as I now live in Kansas City, when I was in 4th grade, we had a states project, and I was assigned Missouri. For my visual presentation, my mom went down to her big box of chocolate molds, and I got to be the only 10-year-old to go to school with Harry Truman's house made out of chocolate. My mom's love of chocolate followed her around the world. When I was living in London, my parents came to visit, and we took a trip to Paris, where my mom, of course, wanted a crepe. We found a little crepe stand manned by a small, older gentleman who only spoke French. My mom looked over the options and said, chocolat, in her best French accent, which was only slightly better than mine. The man replied with a monotone, oui. She followed it up with, Grand Marnier? The man's eyes lit up with a much more enthusiastic, oui. He then proceeded to make a crepe that had multiple shots of Grand Marnier in it. And that is the story of how my mom got drunk eating a crepe in Paris. Another one of my mother's great loves was roller coasters, as we've heard a lot about. My cousin Bryn had a birthday coming up, and my mom wanted to give her the perfect gift, which Sally mentioned, and decided to make a piece of jewelry. Now, I want to be clear for those of you who don't know. My mom was not making bead bracelets. My mom was going into a workshop and using a blowtorch to solder together pieces of silver. For this gift, she landed on making a roller coaster brooch. She meticulously designed it, even taking reference photos at Great America. It had 2 little silver cars at the top of a hill with a stick person with her hands in the air. But as she was making it, she realized that Bryn, a teenager at the time, might not want to wear a roller coaster pin. Being the incredibly thoughtful woman she was, my mom never wanted to risk making anyone feel bad or guilty, and thus found herself in quite the conundrum. If Bryn would genuinely like it, she wanted to give it to her. But she also didn't want her to feel obligated to accept if she didn't. So my mom hatched the perfect plan. She would wear the pin herself next time she was going to see Bryn, without any indication it was intended to be a gift. If Bryn said she liked it, she would take it off in that moment and give it to her. If not, Bryn would never know. Well, until now, I guess. Sorry, Mom. That the pin was ever meant to be a gift. In addition to making jewelry, as everyone has mentioned, my mom loved to sew. She majored in merchandising and was always incredibly proud of the coat she made as her final project, which is the same coat that Sally had mentioned. This also meant that I always had the best Halloween costumes growing up, and I had some out there requests, but she was always happy to accommodate them and would cobble together different patterns to make my costumes, including a centaur, which was a muscle shirt plus the back half of a horse, and King Kamehameha, the same muscle shirt, but with a loincloth and flesh-colored shorts. I, of course, wanted to be in King Kamehameha after a family trip to Hawaii, a place my mom truly loved and always wished she could return to. It was one of many family vacations I took with my mom and dad, which were always a highlight of the year. And my mom, ever herself, didn't want anything on those trips to be substandard, starting with the hotel room. Without fail, after seeing the hotel room we were booked in, my mom would march downstairs and tell the front desk that the room had some issue and that we needed a different one, leading my dad to joke every time we went on vacation that we should just ask the front desk at check-in to give us the replacement room immediately. We may have teased my mom about this, but according to Kate, I've carried on this tradition by rejecting the first rental car we are offered almost every time. Luckily for Kate, Micah, and his soon-to-be sister, that isn't the only tradition I'll be carrying on from my mom. I will think of her every time I share my old Halloween costumes with my kids, every time we go to a museum or the zoo or an amusement park. I'll think of her whenever we need a chocolate fix late at night, whenever we go ice skating, and whenever a classic show tune comes on the radio. She'll be there when you're searching for the bakery that makes the best birthday cakes, and whenever we see the gems at the Field Museum or the Fairy Castle at the Museum of Science and Industry. And when we see a little Havanese being walked down the street, my kids will hear all about Sassy. If it's a lab, they'll hear about Simon, and if it's a beagle or dachshund, they'll hear about Carly. If it's a German Shepherd, they'll hear about Primo, and if it's a poodle, they'll hear about Tiger, but maybe not Carmel. And they'll come to know what we all know, that my mom was the best. I know everyone says that, but for her, it was true. We can see it from the lifelong friendship she had, from how anyone who met her loved her instantly, and from the closeness she maintained with her family, especially her sisters, Debbie and Karen. We can also see it simply from everyone here today. I know you all loved her, and she truly loved all of you too. Thank you for coming from near and far to be with us. Mom, I love you. I miss you so much already.
Thank you, Brett. And finally, we'll hear from Barbara's husband, Norman.
My wife was a wonderful woman with qualities that exemplify some of the best traits that people can have. She was empathetic. She was considerate. She was appreciative. She was honest. She was loyal. She was caring, affectionate. She was forgiving. She was very forgiving. And she was exceptionally forgiving. She was also much smarter than she gave herself credit for. Barbara was a mommy's mommy, okay? She was wonderful with Brett. All of our canine companions. Sassy was not my favorite dog, but we'll leave that for another time. Barbara's relationship with Brett was truly one of the most gratifying things of our marriage and really of my life. From the time he was very young up until the time that he was involved with Kate, they would stay up. He was home for whatever, 3 nights, maybe 1 night of it. They would stay up 12, 1, 2 in the morning talking about whatever they were talking about. Not an occasional thing, but something that was an ongoing, regular basis. The only specific thing I remember is one night, Barbara getting into bed and saying to me, "Boy, did I get a lot of good stuff tonight." And I would get the details later. The essence of Barbara is revealed by a incident that happened a number of years ago. Barbara one day helped reunite a lost dog with its owner. Okay, that was wonderful, very nice. Everybody was happy. A couple of 3-4 weeks goes by, and Barbara comes in the house one afternoon and tells me she has a dog in the back seat of her car. It seems that when Barbara was driving home, she saw this dog sitting in the front yard of a corner house down our block. And she was able to coax the dog into the back seat of her car. She was afraid to get too close to the dog to read its tag, because obviously she didn't know it. Upon further investigation, it was determined that this dog had been removed from its own front yard. So we took the victim back, extended our apologies, and said our goodbyes. Now, later on, I pointed out to Barbara that someone simply watching what had happened that day might conclude that she was trying to steal this dog. It might be an exaggeration for me to say that the look on her face when she realized that was one of terror. But it's not. I was fairly certain, looking at Barbara and knowing Barbara, that at that moment in time, she was contemplating her imminent arrest and the possibility of incarceration. So that ended Barbara's career as a volunteer undercover secret agent of Skokie Animal Control. A number of years later, during Alzheimer's, Barbara was living at home, and she was just about to get into bed one night, and she turns to me and she says, "Do you know Micah, Brett's son?" "Yes, I'm his grandfather." Barbara thinks about that, looks at me and says, "Well, you know, it really is a small world." You know, even though it's almost always okay to laugh at sometimes, we all know that Alzheimer, which is one part of dementia, it is not funny. They call it the long goodbye. It is really the long, hard, gut-wrenching, agonizing, painful goodbye. Barbara had atypical Alzheimer's. That simply means that it starts in a different part of the brain that most cases do. And because of that, with very minor exception, she did know who everybody was throughout almost virtually the entire time of her disease. A few weeks ago, it didn't matter. I would walk in and I would see her, and whoever was pushing her, there's my husband, okay? And we could have conversations where at times her brain cells, the ones that were left, would line up correctly, and it seemed like, this is Barbara. Her core never left her, okay? Never left her. Even as the disease decimated her, okay, Barbara was always Barbara. One book I read mentioned that no matter what you see on the outside of a dementia patient, your loved one is in there somewhere. Hospice is not a four-letter word, okay? Hospice did not cause Barbara to die earlier. Hospice provided her care, comfort, consideration, medication, a personal aide to help her get ready in the morning 5 days a week, and a nurse who would come and watch her and examine her 2 times a week, and then send me a message as to what her status was on that day. Because she had hospice, okay, Barbara died very comfortably, okay? They had the medication, they gave her to her on time. Every issue that she had that was related in any way to her comfort was addressed. So hospice is a good thing. Barbara did at home, and then for the years she was in memory care, she had a constant stream of visitors led by her friends. These people were her first responders. They ran to her and they stayed with her. They provided her with some ability to attempt to live with some normalcy. Each and every visit by each and every person was important, meaningful, and sustaining to Barbara. She knew who was there, and it was important to her. These visits, whether people went once or 50 times, whether they called me, texted me, all of the contact by all of the people, direct or indirect, they showed friendship, love, and great humanity. I was Barbara's caregiver for about a year. I couldn't have done it alone. The cavalry showed up. The cavalry was Barbara's sister Debbie and my sister Sharon. They provided me and Barbara with critical assistance that, more than anything, helped preserve and enhance Barbara's quality of life. You can't even think of a greater gift. Service is almost over. And Barbara's family must take her to the cemetery. Your presence here today provides comfort and support to Brett, myself, Debbie, all of Barbara's family, all of her friends. The support will help us as I will use words I did not author, as we bear the unbearable and we endure the unendurable. I loved Simon most of all.
Norman, thank you very much. There is a prayer that we say every day in the Pesukei de Zimra, the verses of praise, the Birchot HaShachar. And one of the lines goes, "Blessed is the one who shows compassion for all creatures." Now that's directly talking about God, that particular line, but it could be applied to Barbara. All creatures. We're told that how she loved dogs and how she had many dogs. And being a dog person myself, I also love dogs. And I always think that when you see how a person reacts around animals, often it translates to how they are with human beings. And Barbara was one who it seemed had that compassion for all creatures. Every family, if they're lucky, has someone who is the glue, who holds everybody together, who is every place. She's everywhere. And that was Barbara for your family. And that kind of person seems like they're irreplaceable. I mean, in many ways, she is. But that she's gone now means that the next generation steps up and becomes that person who is there for nieces and nephews and friends, and maybe new friends, maybe people who aren't friends yet but will become soon. As Angie and Sally said in their remarks, we hope that Barbara visits us in our dreams, and she will. We say in our tradition that the people who have gone on to the world to come live on here in the hearts and memories of those who remain. When we'll say the words of Kaddish Hatom, the Mourner's Kaddish, and it says just that. And I don't believe that's just lip service. I believe it's true. I am touched deeply by your love for Barbara, and consequently by your grief, because when we love strongly, we're going to have to grieve deeply. It's just part of living and part of dying. I want to add just two quick notes to what I gathered from talking with Norman and Brett yesterday. That Barbara was a great music lover. She was a lover of all music, but she loved pop music. She loved musicals, of course, as we have said. She saw My Fair Lady and The King and I, and it made her want to be on stage. She was not a performer in that way, but it made her feel like she really wanted to be on stage. She saw live the Beatles, Elvis, and Frank Sinatra, what she called the Holy Trinity of show business. To get to see all those acts live, pretty amazing. It's interesting to me that Barbara skated as an adult. And she skated, of course, on the chip blades, a name that she wasn't really fond of, but she liked precision skating. And because she was the fastest one on the team, whenever they did a star, she would always skate out to the end because she's the one who could skate, had to skate the fastest. And the last thing I'll add is that I love the fact that, and admire the fact that Barbara was an aficionado of roller coasters. But she would take the kids, and as Brett said, wait in line all those times. But then she'd go back another day to get the rides the other rides that she wanted to go on. So I guess our question is, how do we? It'd be enough if we came here and honored Barbara with the requisite prayers and memories, but better we should leave this room changed in some way, having heard about her life. I know all of you who knew her and loved her will be forever affected and forever blessed by knowing Barbara and having her in your lives. But I would just offer this. I'd say, in memory of Barbara, go to somebody's birthday, and not their 60th or their 80th or their 90th. Go to a 42nd, or go to an 8th, or go to a 53rd. Show up on those times when maybe it's not expected that everyone's going to show up. Go to someone's play, go to a relative's play, go to maybe even a neighbor's or someone you know maybe moderately. Go and show up and be in the audience and cheer them on. It makes a huge difference in children's lives, but not only children, but everyone's lives. And be there with those gifts that are expected and maybe those gifts that are not so expected. Norman, you mentioned that Barbara was a kind person. You know, often, and I said this to Norm and Brett yesterday, often kind is undervalued in our society, right? Oh, some person was kind. Well, kind is huge. Barbara was obviously an insanely artistic and creative person. But all that would mean nothing if she wasn't kind. And be a kind person. Reach out to people. Listen to them. Barbara, rest in peace. Zichrono livracha. May her memory, may your memory ever be a blessing to all who knew you in this world. I'll ask you now, as you were able to please rise for Kamal Rachamim, memorial prayer. El Mare Rachamim, Shochen Bamramim, Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Chanfecha Shchina, B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utechorim, Kezohar Akiyah Masirim, Et Nishmat Brina Leah Bat Shmuel, שהלכה לעולמו. ענה בעל הרחמים הסתיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים. וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו. ותנוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. God, filled with compassion, whose loving presence ever surrounds us, bring final rest to the soul of Barbara Lynn Ruber, who has returned to her source. May the memory of her life shine forth like the brilliance of the skies above as it brightens our own lives even now. May you, who are the source of all compassion, shelter her beneath the protection of your wings and bind her soul among the living, that she may rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated.
Friends, this concludes the services here at the chapel. The interment and burial services will continue at Memorial Park Cemetery here in Skokie. For those of you traveling with us to the cemetery and the funeral procession, please do keep the following safety precautions in mind. Please make sure that your bright headlights and your four-way hazard flashes are on. Please be sure to obtain an orange funeral safety sticker for your windshield, and we will be providing several of the cars in the procession with a magnetic orange flag to be placed on top of your car. Please travel as close as safety permits to the car in front of you to avoid any gaps in the procession. For your own safety and security, I would suggest not speaking or texting while driving to the cemetery in the funeral procession. Following the interment, the family will be together at the Ruber residence at 5130 Morse Avenue in Skokie for Shiva, and they'll be resuming Shiva Saturday evening beginning at 6:30 in the evening. The family has requested that any memorial contributions in Barbara's memory to the Alzheimer's Association. That information, as well as the information regarding Shiva, is available in the service folder that you should have received when you came into the chapel today. If not, we do have that for you as you leave. And for those of you joining us online, all of the information regarding memorial contributions and the Shiva information is also available on our website. The following individuals have been asked to serve as pallbearers: Josh Wexler, Mark Greenberg, Jim Garrity, Tom Eisenberg, Angie Stotis, and Sally Walker. At this time, I would ask everyone to please rise and stand in place. For the pallbearers to please come forward to my right as we escort the casket, the family, and the cantor from the chapel. Thank you.